Today's session is about digital healthcare and intensivist by Dr. Arvind V, a consultant anesthetist and an intensivist. Okay, so about our doctor, Dr. Arvind V. He's a consultant anesthetist and an intensivist at MMRV Hospital, Mogapet, Chennai. And he has various experiences in obstetric and neuroanesthesia and trauma care. And also, he has previously worked with various hospitals like Apollo, SIMS, Noble, and Parvati hospitals in Chennai. And during this COVID time, he has managed a few COVID care units in Chennai. And he completed MD anesthesiology from Annamalai University in the year 2015 and MBBS from Toothukudi Government Medical College in the year 2018. And one more, he has recently opened his clinic called One Health Clinic in Saidapet. It is a 24/7 outpatient service. Hi, Dr. Arvind.
Hi, thank you, Vashini, for the intro.
Yeah.
So, since you insisted that you wanted to see the machines that we use, we have a 10-minute window. They have another surgery. So, I'll just start by showing you and say hi to our team. This is Karthik, our chief staff nurse. We call him chief. So, with his permission, we'll go take over the machine. Just one second.
Okay.
So, this is the anesthesia machine that we use in the OT.
Okay.
So, this has an oxygen pipeline coming in. This is one of the list machines, so most of the adjustments are done by the machine itself. So we have a controller for the percentage of oxygen and other gases. And we have this sensors. These sensors going in that tell us how much percentage of oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and everything goes in and comes out.
Okay.
So this is the level of data collection that goes on every second.
Okay.
Is this clear? You want another go?
Can you give us an introduction about anesthesiology, anesthesiologist, and intensivist, and what are your roles as an anesthesiologist and an intensivist?
So myself as an anesthesiologist, I am in charge of the patient starting from right before surgery to post-surgical recovery period. So most of the work in anesthesia is about pre-optimizing the patient before surgery based on his previous baseline parameters and how it's going to change intraoperatively based on the medicines that I'm going to give him, because every anesthetic medication is going to change his heart rate, BP, and a lot of other parameters. So, and how does that impact the recovery and him going back home early? That is my main role as an anesthesiologist. And we also do a lot of pain management. In intensive care, it's a separate domain where it includes a few surgical patients, but a lot of, as you would have seen during the pandemic, we were dealing with a lot of COVID patients. And it was more of pulmonology care and ventilator care. And I think that got more people educated about the role of an intensivist and ICUs in healthcare.
Okay.
And in my hospital, I do a balance of both anesthesia and ICU. I manage the COVID ward here, COVID ward with ICU. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, so can you explain what is
anesthesiology? Talking about the technological advancements. I'm sorry, come again.
Okay.
Yeah, tell me.
No, you can continue.
No, you tell me.
You can continue. Okay. So can you just just give us a small introduction, what is anesthesiology and what are the types of anesthesia we use, how it is administered to the patients, few things like that.
Okay. So anesthesiology, people think that it's just about getting people knocked out. There are a lot of things besides general anesthesia, which we commonly refer to as people getting knocked out. Latest advancements in regional anesthesia, where we go visualize the nerve under ultrasound guidance, just block the selective nerves and give you selective anesthesia to the region of the body that is required.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, Dr. Arvind, I have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought, please carry on.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So during the pandemic, what we saw as a technological advancement was we found a shortage of doctors turning up to actually give opinions on patients because they were COVID positive. So we were really in shortage of pulmonologists, cardiologists, who really turned up to see patients in person. It was more of video conferencing. For the first time, everybody was on a video conference, and there were certain companies that launched ultrasound and echocardiogram probes that could be used remotely and with remote reporting systems, where anybody who's not even trained in using these equipments could go online and just get the reports done. I'm sure that not all of them are legally allowed, but as far as I know, echocardiogram and remote reporting of ECG is already HIPAA compliant, and a lot of insurance companies do allow that. Which brings us to point of care health.
Okay, then we'll move on. Next, can you explain about a few of the digital technologies that you've come across?
So one that I saw in the ICU sector was there was a certain company that had I don't know, I'm not a techie guy, so bear with me. They had a box that all the patient's data, including the heart rate, BP, that goes into the monitors, that goes into the conventional monitors, goes into the machine, and that puts it up on the cloud for everyone with access in real time the patient's clinical parameters from wherever they are. I was heading the ICU unit, so I leave one of my subordinates in the ICU. I cannot be there 24 hours. So I can sit back at home, and if I have some doubt about some patient that I was following up in the morning, I can sit at home and look at his data from home, how it has changed over time. And if I want to give out any early orders, it was very useful for me. So remote monitoring systems, I don't know what they call it exactly.
Okay.
And besides that, I think the advancements in monitoring technologies was most significant. I'm not sure how that translates into this webinar.
So that's really great for everyone, right? Both the family as well as people like you, which gives remote control. Good. And
in fact, the concept of virtual ICUs itself is more than 20 years old. And where now in present times, I've heard that have cameras, HD cameras that are placed inside a virtual ICU with a central command center where the chief intensivist sits and he is giving out orders with his junior doctors present in the respective places, especially in remote areas where access to healthcare is limited. These kind of models are being executed from within the city. And with these cameras, they zoom in up to the patient's pupil to see what is going on.
Very good.
With other parameters that are running parallelly in their screen, and just like the matrix, I guess.
That's really great. Yes. Additional advancement in that area, Dr. Arvind, in fact, Sprightly is doing is, what you are telling is the camera is there, and you can zoom in, check, which is basically a manually you have to look into it and check. Whereas the camera can be even given
on. Yeah, I've heard of your cameras being more smarter than us.
Right. What, in fact, Sprightly is also doing is to add a AI, artificial intelligence, to that camera, and it can be configured to detect, certain activities like fall. A patient is moving and falling down, or pulling the wire cable. That can be detected, and immediately alert will be sent to the doctors or nurses that there is an emergency happening, instead of you sitting and monitoring manually all the time. That's also an advancement. In fact, Sprightly is already doing in the other industries.
Okay. So I'm saying this is already possible.
Yeah.
It's not a remote possibility.
Yeah. Adding artificial intelligence to the camera. Yeah. Whereas it's more of a real-time manual process, manual control. It's more than the real-time manual view. It's that you don't need to manually view it. Camera will watch. And if there is a patient who is falling down, it has to be that predictive analysis it will have to do. And then it can send you alert via SMS or mobile that saying that this patient is falling down or the numbers are going up. alerts like that additionally can do. But I think the advancement is always there.
Yeah, I'm sure that some of these processes can be automated.
Yeah.
We still, even with all these technologies, we still do record the heart rate and BP on a sheet of paper on an hourly basis or something.
Yeah.
Because the industry demands us to be so.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that a camera or another AI system would pick up these parameters and record it and free us to do the other things.
Correct. But even now, probably the so-called parameters and all, you are noting down manually rather than using the iPad and automatically taking the inputs on the real time, right? The nurses are
The
not.
Problem is just with see, I'm a person who, for example, when I work in an to spread out certain pieces of paper side by side so that I can compare my data, which becomes hard with just one screen. And comparing his urine output with his clinical parameters and the previous day's notes is not possible for me within a single pad.
Correct.
Probably you can give me some VR projections that would be more helpful, but it just delays
Yeah,
the
I
process.
think the team can take note and come back. I just wanted to have some points. Maybe team people, you can ask other questions, Vashini.
Yeah, sure. So, Dr. Arvind, the last question. So, ICU is a place which requires more digitization and where human errors must not be taken very lightly. So, that digitization, right? So, what you think that you and the other anesthesiologists around the globe would require?
See, one thing we find difficult is, unlike for other foreign countries, especially in India, we don't have this habit of doing a regular health checkup or even keeping our health records in the proper place. So suddenly one day when they turn up with a problem, their past medical records are missing and they don't remember half the jargon that was already written in there. So probably if their past medical records can be easily digitized and retrieved, a person traveling from say Tirunelveli to Chennai for an emergency surgery is in a panic and he forgets his records. But if it is online, it's easier for me to cross-reference it before giving him anesthesia.
Okay.
Actually,
And that is already established.
In fact, that's the need of everyone in the world, and unfortunately, the negative side of
would solve half the problems, half the errors, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. But unfortunately, even Microsoft and Google, they also try to create a central repository, medical records repository. But there are others who are ready to hack, and
the question is about more of data security, even with the cameras that we were speaking.
Yeah, very difficult. And so the Personal Data Protection Acts and all is coming in place, which is not making things easier. But slowly things are getting more tighter, more possible to do such things.
Dr. Arvind,
Yeah.
I have a question for you. So, what are the technologies that you would like to have to improve the safety of the patient?
When we talk about safety of patients, one aspect of it is inside a hospital would be a drug-related error. The other would be a fall injury. These are the major concerns.
Okay.
So whatever we are talking about is part of nursing care.
Mm.
So how do you automate nursing care?
Okay.
So I don't think the entire process can be automated. There has to be a human factor in it. Because even with, I think people need a face, when they are with a problem, they need a face to talk to or at least put the blame on. They can't put the blame on the machine. So probably the data integration and data retrieval can be made into a more refined process so that we come to better conclusions clinically.
Okay.
But how much you can monitor with the technologies you have is something you have to tell me. Because he was talking about cameras that could already do what we were talking about.
Okay.
But then the question is about data security once you start recording things.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's what's hindering the progress of that.
I think I have one more question. Hello.
Yes, yes.
So, like in the introduction, I said about like trauma care, right? So, what are the type of traumas you really face in the hospital? For what kind of
The center
traumas
I'm
patients
currently
come in?
working at is more of a cosmetic and aesthetic center. I was previously working with the trauma care center near Krompet. So we used to do a lot of ortho injuries, neuro trauma,
Mhm.
neurosurgical traumas,
Okay.
where uh, I'm sorry, what was the question again?
The type of traumas the
Type
patients
of
come in.
injuries.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all type of traumas, man. Spine injuries, brain injuries, hand
Okay.
traumas, leg traumas,
Hmm.
all type of injuries. We see like 10 to 20 road traffic accidents per day. So
Okay.
you can imagine.
But to track those, do you use any digital technology now? Anyone?
We do have a lot of monitoring parameters like we saw inside the operating theater. We do have a carbon dioxide, exhaled carbon dioxide percentage monitors, which will give us an idea about how much the brain blood flow can be to a relative extent, which helps us when treating patients specifically with neuro injuries. And there is so much of data collection, almost all parameters, starting from how much fluids he takes in to how much urine comes out, is measured and documented on a daily basis. But what do we do with all this data? Starting from his previous medical history to his previous surgical history to his drug intake to his current clinical parameters, everything is documented and kept inside any hospital to the patient steps.
Okay.
But how do you integrate it and what kind of data we can retrieve out of it?
Yeah, that's a challenge. That's a challenge. So that's the challenge with the entire data world, not only with the medical, but anywhere. But the answer
But then again,
actually
when all these recordings are done by humans, is where the error happens.
correct.
It's hard to explain that, but uh, uh, probably automation in data collection can help streamline the process and
Mm.
reduce errors in reporting.
But just to address this particular point, Dr. Arvind, the point is there is tons and tons of data across various collected across various ways, right? And the question is always is what to do with that. Um, but the answer to that is instead of looking hundreds and thousands of items, look for one thing that you want. Look for one thing that you want. Either it could be a patient, particular patient related, or across different patients. Okay, a common data,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then seek IT help to retrieve those common data to arrive a pattern. Then that will help for you to analyze the pattern to see how you can change your medications or what sex. So it's like it's the ocean, but among that you have to choose what is it you want, and it is also difficult decision making. But at point, just make one decision. This parameter I want to get across these 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 patients, and then do an analysis to find out. Like that only you have to approach.
Okay. So especially in anesthesia, what I would like to have is, they have these nowadays. What we were doing with big machines, monitoring all their heart rate and BP, has come into smaller wristbands that can be connected to your iPhones and
Yeah,
Androids, and they start anywhere between measuring your heart rate and also oxygen saturation to skin resistance. There is so much data being collected with just a wristband, and I think that with this level of data collection, patient who gets discharged after surgery is only being arbitrarily monitored at home once he gets discharged
correct.
after the anesthetic and surgical process.
Yeah.
Probably that kind of data collection in post-surgical patients can yield you a lot of results that previously was not even documented.
Yeah, correct. That is true. So that's where you have to make a call on either to monitor and collect data post surgery remotely, and then do an analysis, or I already have 10,000 types of data, but I want to choose one type of data and do an analysis for the in-house understanding, like that.
Okay, I think we can move on to the next session.
Please.
So the next will be the Q&A. Participants, you can ask your questions to Dr. Arvind now.
Hi, Arvind. So, really, it was a very informative session. So, I just have a doubt on. Can you please explain us about the medical legal solution in digital intensive care?
I'm sorry, coming in, it was not clear. Medical legal issues in digital healthcare?
Yes. Yes, you are correct.
So far, I haven't come across anything personally, but again, the question I think should be only about data security. Besides that, I don't think there should be any problem.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Arvind, I
So when
have a
you guys
question.
are talking about automating all this with AI. Yeah. Yes.
Dr. Arvind, once you finish, I will have my question. Thank you.
Okay. So when you're talking about putting this in AI and processing all this data, what do you have to offer in terms of data security?
Sorry, I'm not sure on the question. Can you please repeat?
When you're talking about when we were specifically talking about these HD cameras, and you said that these certain processes can be put into an AI, and so talking about remote monitoring and centralized reporting systems, what my question is, how does the data security work? Should that be something we worried about, or is there a solution to that already?
So data security is something that we take care from day one. Like, to answer your question, it works very similar like how the end-to-end encryption works in WhatsApp. Like, nobody can really read your WhatsApp message. Even WhatsApp cannot read your WhatsApp messages. So even if we provide those edge cameras with AI enablement, they cannot be read by others easily. So that level of technology is available. Hacking around that is a different subject, but a good level of security and governance can be provided in general.
Okay.
Hello, Dr. Arun. Hello.
Hello.
So my question is about about the future of the how will be the future of critical care unit will be based on your views.
I think the job that was done by a team of doctors and nurses can now be brought into a single man job. Everything starting from monitoring to the presence of the doctor is required only physically, only for the certain procedures that need to be physically done. Otherwise, in critical care, it's more about the decision making and monitoring the patient than active physical intervention in most circumstances.
Okay, doctor. Thank you.
So with remote monitoring systems and data collection in place, I'm sure that the job that was done by 10 persons can now be actually done by 3 to 4 persons, which also brings down the cost of healthcare for people who want access to it.
Okay, doctor.
More questions, participants, you have for the doctor?
Yes, Varsha.
Please go ahead.
Okay. And Doctor, currently the digitalization is increasing in healthcare. Do you think it will affect the doctor-patient relationships?
It was previously assumed to be so, but during the COVID pandemic, with a lot of doctors as well as patients very reluctant to step out of their homes, almost everybody started going online for consultations. And I don't think there was any problem. We started sending out digitally signed prescriptions. People started just accepting it. Like in the post demonetization period, they accepted everything. So I think they just went with the transformation. But still needs to be seen. Probably 6 months down the line, we'll get to know what kind of medical legal issues arise out of it. But otherwise, between doctor-patient relationships, I think that gave patients an even better level of comfort, being able to look at the doctor and get advice whenever they want and wherever they want.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
So, Dr. Arvind, are the patients able to adapt to this change, or like they are facing any difficulties in it?
See, in critical care, when a patient ends up in an ICU, there is a lot of emotional factors involved in it, from the patient side as well as the clinician side.
Yeah.
So, any day they want someone to be present in person, to look at the face, so that it gives them a certain level of attachment rather than a certain level of detachment.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think computers. I hope that computers won't be replacing our jobs anytime in the near future. But I think in the future we'll be needing less people working in all sectors.
Doctor Kadavulum cannot be replaced.
Sir, தாராளமா replace பண்ணலாம் சார்.
இல்ல டாக்டரும் கடவுளும்
டாக்டரையும் கடவுளையும் ஈஸியா replace பண்ணலாம். நர்ஸ் replace பண்றதுலாம் கஷ்டம் actually. So when we talk about healthcare, you guys should probably also get to talk to certain nurses to get some ideas, because they call it nursing the patient back to health. They don't call it doctoring the patient back to health.
Yeah.
So,
but there are a lot of advancement happening. What you say is we are already working on certain projects which is replacing human resources, unfortunately. Like voice bot handling pre-operations calls, post-operation calls, instead of while doing a pre-operation outpatient pre-operation surgery, a day surgery. So I think when you call a patient for a day surgery, you will also want to ensure that the day he is coming is healthy, he has no fever, no cough, cold. Otherwise, you don't want to do the day surgery, right? You will have to cancel it and move to the next time. So I think you will do some pre-day surgery surveys to ensure that the patient is ready and healthy and come. So these are now probably doing by the nurse calling and asking, are you all right? Are you healthy enough to come tomorrow? Instead, the voice bot can ask the same monotonous questions and ensure that.
I can assure you, it's not a monotonous question when it comes from a nurse.
But there are some standard questions. Basically, are you healthy? Are you? Do you have cough, cold, fever? Have you traveled
It's
to?
going to be a standard format, no matter how much emotions you put behind it.
Yeah. So if it is a process-oriented activity, then it is a standard process. And the standard questions being repeatedly asked by the nurse, thousands of people, that nurse or the caller, that the help desk caller person will get really bored. That is all being now try to replace with a voice bot. Simple questions and education materials like you have an eye surgery. Eye surgery or eye operation, whatever. Post to eye operation, you are supposed to maintain your eye, certain things, clean your eye with this cotton, clean this, like that. There are videos to education materials now being done by physically telling you and showing you videos. Send a bot and the bot will tell you like that. There are advancements going across. Yeah, long way to go, but definitely.
So any
But
more
I'm sure
questions?
that all the data is being already collected. So whatever you want to look into and integrate, I think it's up to you guys.
Yeah. Data collection is one thing, integration is one thing. But I repeat to that, I come back to that point is the who is the owner of the data? You run the
The patient is the owner of the data.
No, one track, the patient is the owner of the data. Another track, you run the hospital and you have the data of hundreds and thousands of patients. And that data, you are the owner. And with that data, what analysis?
I don't think any hospital can claim to be the owner of a patient data. We handle the patient data, but nobody can be. I don't think the hospital or an organization can own anybody's data.
No, not in terms of individual, right? In terms of common data. Data, right? So how do we arrive to a common data based on you meet hundreds of thousands of patients and collect information, and all those are anonymous. It can be without name the person, but you collect data, and based on the data, you wanted to do some analysis and come to a conclusion, right? That is what I'm telling.
Yes.
That is what I'm telling. That will help you to make your profession more data driven and more knowledgeable, more kind. If you know 1,000 patients are there, and then this 1,000 patients have this side effect because of this activity, then you will tweak that particular task or based and avoid that side effect, right?
Yes.
So that is not the patient deciding. That's the people like you, doctors, and deciding.
Yeah, I think the data should be anonymous and everyone should share the data. Like maybe I can it's a similar thing like a Bitcoin address. Like you know that address and you know that there is some value in it. Like and the next time you do some other transaction with this, you can do other transaction with the same address, but you do not know who that address belongs to, because patients will also be somewhat worried about if their personal details are out, because anyone can search about any other people's health issues and all that. But if it is anonymous, and then if we collect some thousands and thousands of this data and their effects and side effects and all that, it would be really good for someone, like, because what I wanted was recently one of my relatives was having this COVID. We had the tests and all that. I got the values, but I do not know what, like, if I search in the internet, like there are some random things coming up with that for that values. But if we had this data, and if we, like, if there is something where I can query, like, what is the pattern, if these are the values, then it could have been very good for me personally.
Yeah.
To add few more points, so it is, coming to the healthcare application, we call it as PII, which is patient identification information. Like it could be their first name, last name, and email address, and few other demographic information by the patient should not be, taken into account. But we can get the other information about the patient, the problems they face, the symptoms, and other conditions, and their lifestyle, and all this information can be collected. And the application can run some statistics out of that and share, and do some analytics out of that. But we do it depends on the country and the kind of compliances that every country come up with. So in US and other there is something called GDPR in European countries, and HIPAA compliance in US and things like that. So based on that, there are multiple terms that can be shared with the patient and also to the doctors and the users who are using the application to sign in certain terms, and they'll agree to the terms. Only if they agree, we can make use of the patient's non-PII, their other information. But we cannot, make use of their, or anyone can view, even other than doctor, no one can even view their information, the patient name or other information. If they view, that will be even tracked, and who is viewing and what is the purpose of the view. So these kind of information will be tracked by the application, and whomever the users of the application will have to agree to the terms.
And then is that data owned by the hospital or by the government or by the individual? Because only if it is owned by government, it would be useful, I guess.
It depends, Sridhar. So it is not about owning. We store the data, but yes. Yes, Sridhar, please go ahead.
Yeah, carry on.
I think without the patient's
carry on,
permission,
Sridhar.
nobody can dispense that data to anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, with the patient's permission that they could use this for treating others, like for helping others, but your data would be anonymous, like you will not be linked to this data, then that would be a good way, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. But without revealing the patient information, because there are a lot of other issues that can happen if we know this particular patient is having this disease or any such symptoms. So that recently there were some applications in India which they actually exploded, or the information of the patient is being exposed, and that were used by other hospitals and other pharmaceutical companies and things like that to know the patient details and other issues they face. So there are many other complications when we actually expose the data to public. So the patient information should not be exposed, to the outside world in any case. So that is my perception, and also based on the complaints that we work with the healthcare applications.
Thank you, Shireen. Thank you for that. I think we have received a ton of information in this webinar today. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Arvind, and thank you, participants, for your time. Thank you so much. I think we can end the call here.
Okay, guys. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vasu.
Thank you.